Jake had just moved into his new apartment, excited to start fresh in the bustling city. He had always wanted to live in a place where humans and aliens coexisted, but the reality of it still felt strange. The idea of having an alien roommate seemed like a dream he never thought would come true. But now here he was, standing in his new living room, staring at a tall, graceful alien woman who would be his roommate. Her name was Lyra, and she was unlike anyone Jake had ever seen before. Lyra wasn't human, but she wasn't the terrifying kind of alien you read about in stories either. She looked almost ethereal. Her skin had a smooth, pale lavender hue, and her long hair shimmered like strands of silver moonlight. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, a striking shade of pale blue that seemed to glow in the dim light of the apartment. She wasn't intimidating, but she was definitely different. Lyra stood there with a soft smile, examining the human world with curiosity. She had come from a planet called Arelon, a peaceful world far beyond Earth's star system. Jake had read a lot about her species before agreeing to share a living space, but seeing one up close was a whole different experience. She was tall and elegant, with long, slender fingers that seemed to move with grace, like she was always dancing to a tune only she could hear. "So," Jake said, feeling a little awkward, "what do you think of the place?" Lyra turned to him, her blue eyes bright with excitement. "It is strange. So many colors, so many sounds, I can barely keep up." She laughed softly, her voice melodic and smooth. Jake chuckled, trying to shake off his nerves. He wasn't sure what to expect from an alien roommate, but he didn't think it would be this peaceful. Lyra wasn't loud or overbearing. She was just curious. "Yeah, Earth can be overwhelming, but it's not so bad once you get used to it," Jake said, feeling more at ease now. Lyra nodded, her expression turning serious. "I've read about your species. Humans. So many differences, especially when it comes to reproduction. I have always wondered what it is like." Jake's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean?" Lyra tilted her head, a soft, inquisitive smile crossing her lips. "I mean, how do humans reproduce? I know the basics, sperm, eggs, and all that. But how does it work for you?" Jake was taken aback by the question. He had never had anyone, especially an alien, ask him about human reproduction before. "Well, it's a little more complicated than just sperm and eggs," Jake said, scratching the back of his head nervously. "But I'm sure you can look it up online if you're really curious." Lyra didn't seem deterred. She stepped closer to Jake, her eyes sparkling. "But I want to understand it fully. You're my roommate, Jake. You can explain it to me. It's a cultural exchange, isn't it?" Jake laughed uneasily. "I guess. But this is a little different than the usual roommate stuff. I mean, we're talking about breeding." Lyra's face lit up. "Exactly. Breeding. Humans have a unique way of bonding and creating life, don't they? I find it fascinating." She paused, her gaze softening. "I'm curious about how it feels, how it affects you. I've heard that some species form strong emotional connections through breeding. Is that true for humans?" Jake stood there, his mouth slightly agape, trying to process her words. He had always expected that living with an alien would bring some strange experiences, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. "Well, it's not exactly what you think," Jake stammered, trying to collect his thoughts. "It's about emotions and connection. It's not just a biological thing for humans." Lyra's face seemed to brighten even more. "Connection? Yes, I see. It is the same on my planet, but different. Our bonding rituals are unique to us. But I have always been curious about humans. I want to understand how you experience it." Jake could feel his cheeks warming. He wasn't sure what to say next. This was a conversation he never thought he would have with his alien roommate. But Lyra was genuine in her curiosity, and he didn't want to disappoint her. "Well," Jake said, scratching his chin, "I guess the emotional part is the most important. Breeding is just the result of a deeper connection between two people." Lyra nodded slowly, her long silver hair shimmering with the movement. I think I understand, but I want to experience it firsthand. I want to try human breeding. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Wait, what? You want to try breeding? Lyra's eyes softened. I am an alien, Jake. We are different in so many ways, but I feel a strong desire to understand human customs and to understand you better. I think I must understand the most important aspect of human relationships. Jake was speechless. He had no idea how to respond to that. The idea of his alien roommate wanting to experiment with human breeding, it was a lot to process. I had always thought that humans were the ones who got to experience the wonders of space and alien life. But now here was Lyra, interested in the most intimate part of human existence. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Jake said slowly, trying to wrap his mind around what she was asking. I mean, it's not something you can just experiment with. It's a really big deal for humans. It's about trust, love, and respect. It's not something to try on a whim. Lyra looked disappointed, but she didn't push the matter. Instead, she stepped back and gave him a thoughtful look. I understand. It was wrong of me to bring it up like that. I was only curious. But if you are not ready, I will respect your boundaries. Jake sighed, feeling a bit guilty. He didn't want to shut her down completely. After all, she was just trying to understand him better. It's not that I'm not ready. It's just, I think there's more to it than you realize. Lyra nodded, her blue eyes soft. I will learn. I will take my time to understand the human way. As the conversation moved on, Jake realized that he had just gotten a glimpse of what living with an alien roommate would really be like. Lyra wasn't just a curious outsider. She was an individual with her own emotions and desires. And now, it seemed that her curiosity about human breeding was just the beginning of their strange yet fascinating roommate journey. The next few days were filled with awkwardness and curiosity. Jake had tried to get back to his normal routine, but every time he walked into the living room, he found Lyra studying human biology with an intensity that was almost unsettling. She had stacks of books scattered across the coffee table, many of which Jake had never seen before. There were diagrams of human anatomy, pages filled with notes in a language he couldn't understand, and a small device that looked like it came straight out of a science fiction movie. Lyra, on the other hand, seemed perfectly calm, completely absorbed in her research. She had always been a quick learner, but now she was diving deeper into human biology than Jake could have imagined. She didn't just want to know the basics, she wanted to know everything: how human emotions connected to reproduction, how bonds were formed, and most importantly, how humans experienced intimacy. Jake sat on the couch, his fingers nervously tapping on the armrest. You really don't have to do all this research, Lyra, he said, trying to sound casual. I mean, you're already living with a human. Isn't that enough? Lyra looked up from the book she was reading, her blue eyes locking onto his. There was no judgment, no anger, just pure curiosity. Jake, I appreciate that you're allowing me to live here, but you said that human bonding was about more than just biology. I want to understand it fully. I want to experience it. I can't do that unless I learn everything I can. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Experience it? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. I told you it's not something you can just try out. It's not just a study project, Lyra smiled, a soft and reassuring expression. I understand your concern, but you told me that humans have a strong emotional connection when they form bonds. That's what I want to experience. I don't just want to read about it. I want to know what it feels like. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lyra, his alien roommate, wanted to experiment with human intimacy. It felt strange to think about, but her sincerity was clear. She wasn't just a curious outsider anymore. She was learning, growing, and now she wanted to understand the core of human relationships. So, what exactly do you want to do? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. I mean, I don't even know how to explain something like that to you. Lyra closed the book in front of her and leaned back, her gaze thoughtful. I've learned that human bonding and breeding are closely connected, but I don't think that understanding just the biology is enough. I need to understand the feelings, the emotional aspect. So, I thought it would be best if I tried with you. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. With me? Lyra, we've talked about this. You can't just try human bonding. It's not a test or an experiment, it's personal. Lyra's expression softened, but there was a hint of determination in her eyes. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, Jake. I just want to understand. I've heard that humans form bonds through something called affection. Can you show me? Jake stared at her, speechless for a moment. His mind raced, trying to figure out what he should do. This wasn't something he had ever imagined discussing with a roommate, especially an alien roommate. But there was no denying that Lyra was genuine in her desire to learn, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this was all moving too fast. Okay, Jake said, his voice shaky. Let's talk about it, but slowly. You can't rush into something like this. Lyra nodded eagerly. Of course. Slowly. I will respect your pace, Jake. I just need your guidance. The next few days were a strange blend of awkward conversations and more awkward silences. Jake found himself teaching Lyra about human relationships, but the process felt unnatural. Every time they spoke about affection, emotions, or intimacy, Lyra's innocent curiosity made it hard for Jake to feel comfortable. She wasn't like humans who could intuitively understand these things. Everything was new to her, and she wanted to understand it from the ground up. They sat on the couch one evening, Lyra asking more questions about the concept of affection. Jake tried his best to explain it, but every time he started talking about the emotional bond humans shared, he found himself thinking about what it would be like to be on the receiving end of Lyra's curiosity. Could he really explain it? Could he really let her explore it with him? Jake, I don't understand why humans get so attached, Lyra said, her eyes scanning his face for an answer. I've read that humans grow emotional attachments, but I don't understand what it feels like. Why do humans desire closeness? What's the benefit of it? Jake took a deep breath, trying to put his feelings into words. It's not something you can easily explain. It's like, when you trust someone completely, you want to be close to them. You share your thoughts, your fears, and your happiness. It's about sharing your life with someone. Lyra looked intrigued. So, it's not just about reproduction? Jake chuckled nervously. No, it's about emotional connection. Reproduction is just a part of it, but the connection is what matters most. Lyra thought about this for a moment, then nodded. I understand. It's about trust and sharing. But can I learn this connection by being close to you? Jake's heart raced. I don't think you can learn it just by being close to me. Lyra, it's something that happens over time with trust and shared experiences. Lyra's face lit up. Then we can start with that. We will build trust, yes? Slowly, as you said? Jake hesitated. He wasn't sure if he was ready to open up to her like that. But he knew she was serious about wanting to understand human emotions. Maybe he could help her without crossing any boundaries. Maybe they could stay friends, just friends. Yeah, we can start with trust, Jake said, though he wasn't completely sure what he was agreeing to. The following week. As the days passed, things became more complicated. Lyra began to take his words to heart, and their friendship started to feel like something more. She would sit closer to him when they talked, asking for his opinion on everything from human relationships to Earth's history. There were moments when Jake felt a shift, a change in the air between them, but he couldn't figure out exactly what it meant. One evening, Lyra asked him to help her prepare dinner. It was the first time they had cooked together, and Jake couldn't deny that it felt nice to spend time with her outside of their usual conversations about biology and bonding. You're good at this, Lyra said, her voice soft as she watched Jake chop vegetables. Jake smiled, feeling a little more at ease. I've been cooking for a while. You just have to follow the steps and you'll be fine. Lyra nodded. I wish it were as easy as following steps with human emotions. Jake paused, glancing at her. It's not that simple. Emotions can be messy. They don't follow steps, and sometimes you don't even know why you feel what you feel. Lyra turned to him, her blue eyes searching his face. But is that the beauty of it? That it's unpredictable? Jake smiled softly. Yeah, maybe that's the beauty of it. They finished making dinner, and Jake found himself enjoying the time they spent together. The awkwardness wasn't gone, but it was starting to feel more like a friendship. At least, that's what Jake kept telling himself. But deep down, he knew something was changing. They were starting to connect in ways he hadn't expected, and as much as he tried to ignore it, he felt that pull, like Lyra was becoming more than just a roommate. The days that followed were a strange mixture of curiosity and confusion for Jake. He and Lyra had been spending more and more time together, but it wasn't just about learning anymore. They had shared so many small moments, laughing over a bad TV show, cooking dinner, talking about the differences between their cultures, that the line between friendship and something more had started to blur. Jake tried to push aside the strange feeling that had begun to grow in him. He kept telling himself it was just a friendship, just a roommate situation, but deep down he wasn't so sure anymore. Lyra, for her part, was still learning about human emotions. She seemed determined to understand every little detail about human relationships. But now, she was more observant than ever. Her questions had become more personal, more direct. She would often ask him things like, "What makes you feel loved?" Or, "What do you think about when you're close to someone?" These questions weren't the same as before. Now, they felt intimate. Jake could tell she was trying so hard to understand human emotions, but sometimes her questions caught him off guard. And every time she asked about human affection, Jake felt like he was walking on thin ice. He had never expected to have these kinds of conversations with an alien, let alone his roommate. But Lyra's sincerity was undeniable, and he didn't want to disappoint her. One evening, as they were watching a movie together, Jake noticed something different. Lyra had moved closer to him on the couch than she ever had before. She had always been curious about human proximity, but tonight, she didn't seem to hesitate. Her body was so close to his that their arms brushed occasionally. It felt odd, not uncomfortable, but it made Jake feel a strange warmth in his chest. He quickly tried to push the feeling aside. This wasn't supposed to be complicated. "Jake," Lyra said softly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking. You said that human connections are emotional, that they go beyond just the physical. But how do you know when you've found someone you truly care about? How do you know if they feel the same way?" Jake looked at her, his heart pounding a little faster than usual. He had never been asked such an honest question about his feelings before. Lyra's gaze was steady, her blue eyes searching his face like she was waiting for some kind of answer that would make sense of all this. "I think it's when you feel comfortable being yourself around someone, when you trust them enough to show them your true self," Jake said, his voice a little more tentative than he would have liked. Lyra nodded slowly, her fingers curling slightly as she absorbed the information. "So it's about trust. But how does that lead to affection? I've seen humans become very affectionate even when they don't know each other very well." "Why?" Jake took a deep breath, trying to think it through. "I think affection is a way of showing care. It's an expression of trust, of wanting to be close to someone. It's not just about the physical part. It's about sharing something meaningful with that person." Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned her gaze to the TV screen, but Jake could sense that her thoughts were somewhere else. "I see," she said finally, her voice soft. "But I still don't understand. I want to experience it. I want to feel what it's like to share that closeness." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "Lyra, I don't know if that's something we can just experience together. It's not like flipping a switch, it's about building a connection, a deep one." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no anger in her expression, just more curiosity. I want to try, Jake. I want to know if humans really connect in the way you say. I'm not asking you for anything. I just want to understand. I've never experienced it before. It's all so new to me. Jake ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He didn't know how to explain it. He didn't know how to tell her that human emotions weren't something that could just be experimented with. But Lyra wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She was genuine in her desire to understand, and it was hard to say no to her. I get that you're curious, Jake said, his voice quieter now. But there's more to it than just understanding, Lyra. Emotions are messy, they don't follow rules, and sometimes they don't make sense. I can't just give you the answer you're looking for. It's more complicated than that. Lyra didn't respond right away. Instead, she shifted a little closer, her presence so palpable that Jake couldn't ignore it. I don't mind complicated, she said softly. I want to experience it, no matter how messy it may be. I want to understand even if it takes time. Jake felt his pulse quicken. There was something about the way Lyra looked at him, the way she spoke, that made it hard to focus. He had never been in a situation like this before. He had never felt such an intense curiosity directed at him, and it was both flattering and overwhelming at the same time. Lyra, this isn't something I can just teach you, Jake said, his voice cracking slightly. It's something you feel over time. You can't rush it. It has to grow naturally. Lyra nodded, but she didn't seem discouraged. I understand, Jake. I'm not trying to rush it. I just want to learn. And maybe, in time, I'll be able to feel it too. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He was afraid that what they were building, whatever it was something he couldn't control. Lyra was so different from him. She wasn't human, and yet, she was beginning to understand human emotions in a way that he hadn't expected. For the rest of the night, Jake couldn't focus on the movie. Every time he looked over at Lyra, he felt that same strange warmth in his chest. He didn't know what was happening between them, but it was clear that things had changed. He had never imagined that living with an alien would make him question his own feelings, but here he was, feeling more uncertain than ever. The next morning, things were even more awkward. Lyra had started asking about human touch and affection in a way that made Jake feel uncomfortable. She had never been shy about her curiosity, but now it felt different. She wanted to know what it was like to be touched by someone in a caring way. And Jake didn't know if he was ready to be the one to show her. Jake, Lyra said one morning, her voice soft but filled with intent. I've been thinking. You said that human affection isn't just about the physical. So what about holding hands? I've seen humans do it. What does it mean to you? Jake felt his face flush. Holding hands? It's just a simple way of showing someone you care. It's not always a big deal, but it can mean something when the right person is holding your hand. Lyra looked thoughtful. I want to try it. I want to understand how it feels. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Lyra, I don't know if that's a good idea. It's not something you can just try. But Lyra's eyes were sincere. I'm not trying to rush anything. I just want to understand, to feel what you're talking about. I trust you, Jake. You've been patient with me, and I want to experience this with you. Jake felt a pang of guilt. He knew she was sincere, but he didn't know if he was ready for this level of intimacy with her. Still, he couldn't deny that there was a connection between them, and that connection was growing stronger every day. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of hesitation, Jake held out his hand to Lyra. Okay, he said quietly. Let's try it. Lyra smiled, and for the first time, Jake saw a different kind of light in her eyes. Something that wasn't just curiosity, but something deeper. Something that made him realize that no matter what, this wasn't going to be as simple as either of them had expected. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind for Jake. Things between him and Lyra had changed in ways he couldn't fully explain. Every conversation, every glance felt heavier now, as if they were both standing on the edge of something they weren't sure how to define. But Jake could no longer deny it. There was something between them, Something growing, something that was beyond the simple idea of being roommates. It wasn't love yet, but it was something. Lyra had continued her exploration of human emotions, with the same relentless curiosity. She was starting to understand the small things, like how a simple touch or a shared smile could carry so much weight. She was learning, slowly but surely, how humans formed bonds, how they connected through small acts of kindness and affection. But she wasn't done. She still wanted to understand more, and Jake wasn't sure how far he was willing to let her go. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Jake glanced over at Lyra. She was staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and something else. It was a look he had seen before, but now it felt different. It wasn't just the scientific curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something Jake wasn't sure how to navigate. "Jake," Lyra said, her voice soft and thoughtful. "I've been thinking." Jake turned to face her, his heart racing a little. "What's on your mind?" "I want to try again," she said, her eyes serious. "I know we've talked about this before, but I think I understand now. I want to understand affection. I want to know what it feels like, to be close to someone in that way." Jake swallowed hard. He had been expecting this moment. He had known that, given enough time, Lyra's curiosity would eventually bring them to this point. But now that it was here, he wasn't sure how to respond. Lyra?" he began, his voice unsure. "This isn't something that can be forced. It's not about testing something or proving a point. It's about trust. It's about taking time to get to know someone. And I think we've already started doing that." Lyra nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I understand. I don't want to rush it, Jake. But I feel that I've learned so much, and I think I'm ready to take the next step. I want to experience it, what humans feel when they're close to someone." Jake took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had always been someone who took things slowly, who liked to keep his emotions under control. But Lyra wasn't just anyone, she was different, and the connection between them was undeniable. It was growing stronger with every passing day, and Jake wasn't sure if he was ready to confront what it meant. "I don't know if I can explain it in a way that makes sense," Jake said, his voice quiet. "But it's not about rushing. It's about sharing something that's real. It's about letting yourself trust someone with your feelings. It's about showing them who you really are." Lyra seemed to absorb his words. Her blue eyes locked onto his. "Trust," she repeated. "I understand. I trust you, Jake. I have felt that trust grow every day, and I think that's why I want to take this step with you. Not because it's an experiment, but because I want to understand how it feels. I want to understand what it means to be close to someone." Jake could feel the warmth rising in his chest. Lyra's sincerity was something he couldn't ignore. She wasn't asking for something just for the sake of it. She was asking because she wanted to connect, because she wanted to understand the human experience of affection, and somehow that made all the difference. "Okay," Jake said, his voice a little steadier now. "But we need to take this slowly. We can't rush into something we're not ready for. It's about taking our time building trust even more." Lyra smiled, her face lighting up. "I agree. Slowly. We will take it slow." From that moment, things between them felt different. There was a new understanding between them, a mutual respect that had been growing for weeks. Jake had never thought he would be in a situation like this, and he wasn't sure where it would lead. But one thing was clear. He and Lyra were becoming something more than just roommates. They were becoming friends, confidants, and perhaps something deeper. Next few days were filled with small moments, quiet conversations, shared meals, and walks around the neighborhood. They began to learn more about each other's lives, about their pasts, and about the things that made them who they were. Lyra told Jake about her home planet, Erelon, and how her species had evolved in a society that valued community above all else. She explained how her people formed bonds through a ritual known as soul binding, which was a deeply emotional and spiritual process. It was nothing like human bonding, but Lyra was fascinated by the way humans expressed affection without such rituals. Jake listened carefully, fascinated by her stories. He realized that Lyra was still so new to human experiences. But what was most surprising was how much she had already learned. She had come so far from the curious, confused alien he had met when she first arrived. Now, she was someone who genuinely cared about understanding the human heart. One evening, after they had finished dinner, Lyra turned to Jake with a thoughtful expression. "Jake," she said, her voice softer than usual, "I want to show you something." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Lyra stood up and walked over to the small table where they kept some of the alien artifacts she had brought with her. She picked up a small, delicate object, a necklace, that seemed to shimmer with a soft glow. The pendant was a beautiful, translucent blue stone, and it caught the light in a way that made it look almost magical. "I brought this from my home planet," Lyra explained. "It's a symbol of trust in my culture. When two people form a deep bond, they exchange these necklaces as a promise to protect and care for one another." Jake looked at the necklace, his curiosity piqued. "That's beautiful. What does it mean to you?" Lyra paused, her gaze softening. "It means that we are bound by trust, that we will be there for each other, no matter what. It's not just a physical object, it's a representation of our commitment to one another." Jake felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't sure what to say. The idea of exchanging such a symbol felt so personal. He had never thought about bonding in such a tangible way. But in that moment, as he looked at Lyra, he understood. He understood that what they were building was more than just friendship. It was something deeper, something more meaningful. "I want you to have it," Lyra said, holding the necklace out to Jake. "I want you to have this as a symbol of the trust I have in you." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He had never expected to be in a situation like this, especially with an alien. But here he was, standing in front of someone who trusted him completely. "Thank you, Lyra," Jake said softly, taking the necklace from her. "I don't know what the future holds, but I promise I'll do my best to be worthy of this." Lyra smiled, and for a moment the room seemed to glow with an unspoken understanding between them. It wasn't just about the necklace or the act of exchanging something physical. It was about the trust they had built, the emotional bond they had formed over time. They weren't rushing it. They were letting it grow at its own pace, and that was something Jake had come to appreciate more than he could have ever imagined. As Jake put the necklace around his neck, he realized that he had come to care for Lyra in a way he hadn't expected. Maybe it wasn't the same as the soul-binding rituals of her people, but in its own way it was just as meaningful. "I think we're on the right path," Jake said, his voice filled with quiet certainty. Lyra nodded. "I believe so too, Jake. We're taking it slow, but we're understanding each other better with every step." As the days went on, their bond only grew stronger. And while Jake wasn't sure what the future held, he knew one thing for certain. Lyra had opened his eyes to a whole new way of understanding affection, trust, and what it meant to truly connect with someone.